Welcome back. In the previous video we saw how to create polygon primitives to get started modeling and how to draw them by hand using the Add or Edit Polygon tool. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to see the anatomy of polygons, what makes them tick, what makes up a polygon, okay? And then we're going to see how to edit those different components that make up a polygon. So let me start off by creating myself a cube again. We've already seen a cube. I'm going to create one again. Go to shaded mode so it's easier to see. I'm also going to hide the grid there by hitting G for grid on the keyboard. Okay, so I got myself a cube here. Alright, so what makes up this cube? Well, the cube is made up of basic three main elements or components that you should remember or learn. Okay, and they are points, also known as vertices in other 3D software. Points and vertices, pretty much same thing here in Softimage. And when I go to point mode by hitting T on the keyboard, okay, that's T for Tom, I can see that my points are highlighted in blue and all the edges are highlighted in yellow. I can go ahead and I can actually select these points and I can actually move them around. Okay, I could select a couple of points and I can rotate them. I could select also a couple of points, in other words more than one, and I can also scale them. If I go over here to global mode, switch to COG, I can go ahead and scale them. We'll talk about global mode, local mode, COG, and all that stuff later, so don't worry about it now. We'll get to it. Okay? There's also edges. If I hit E for edges on the keyboard, I can go ahead and I can select actual edges. Now you notice that the blue points or vertices disappear. That's because I'm in edge mode, so I don't really need to see the points or vertices. This is the default behavior in Softimage. What I can do is I can select these edges and I can move them around. I can also rotate them, and you probably guessed it, I can scale them. Pretty interesting. The next component that makes up a polygon object is the polygons themselves. Each wall of this cube is a polygon. Each one of these gray faces is a polygon. They're pretty much outlined by edges. In other words, they're surrounded by edges. So whenever you have closed edges like this, you've got yourself a polygon. Now these polygons, just like with points and with the edges, you can move them around. You can rotate them and scale them and do all kinds of things to them and edit them and to basically end up creating anything in 3D. It could be a character, a monster, a car, a helicopter, a planet, your hand, anything. Okay? But this is the basics and this is where it starts. So Polygon Mode is U on the keyboard to do ray casting mode. If you want to select polygons by dragging a selection, a marquee selection, you can use Y on the keyboard, Y for yellow. Okay, and that lets you make a selection, and anything that's inside the selection gets selected. Of course, the polygon has to be completely encompassed by my blue marquee selection window. Okay, so if I could keep talking about it and it won't make much sense. What you need to do is take a moment to use these different keyboard shortcuts and basically get a little bit of experience, get a feel for it, and it'll make sense to you in no time. In just a couple of minutes you'll be grabbing and moving these components around. Alright, now the next important thing about the anatomy of polygons is editing. We can edit these components. Now at the moment I showed you how to move, rotate, and scale some of these components. We can also edit them in different ways. For example, I can take a polygon here, I can hit Control D on the keyboard, D for duplicate, and basically it looks like nothing happened, but if I pull this out you notice that now I have myself another polygon, so I can continue to extrude and so on and so forth. Okay. Now the long way to extrude is to use the context sensitive menu, which you should be aware of the context sensitive menu if you have a basic understanding of Softimage. If not, you can reach that simply by right clicking anywhere on top of your object. Every time you right click you'll open up a context sensitive menu that changes based upon what you're doing. For example, Softimage knows that I'm tagging or selecting, Softimage calls it tag polygons, okay? So I get this menu with different polygon modeling tools. For example, I've got a tool for slicing polygons, I've got a tool for beveling, I've got a tool for, say, extruding along the axis. So I can click on that, I get myself a PPG that pops up by default, and I have some options here so I can change the length of the extrusion. I can also add more subdivisions to the extrusion. Then I can go to transform and maybe give this thing some rotation. So you end up with something that looks kind of like this. Very useful, very useful. Okay, that's the extrude operator right there. I can also go ahead and edit other things like edges. For example, if I want to take this edge back here, I can right click, and now you notice that I get a tagged edges context menu. and I can use the bevel components operator right there, and I can give this thing some distance, come in here and give it some rounding, okay, and get myself a nice beveled edge. We're going to be using all these tools when we create the project for this tutorial. Another very important thing before I end this video is the construction history. I know that I talked about it very briefly when I talked about modeling construction mode up here. You want to make sure you're in modeling construction mode, okay? Now, all these polygon objects, when you're in modeling construction mode by default, every time you bevel something or extrude something, it gets recorded in the construction history, alright? So where is this construction history? Each object has its own construction history. You can access it a couple of different ways. Here's a very simple way of accessing it. Select the object. You come over here to the MCP main command panel. You notice there's a button here that says selection, okay? So I'll click on that, and now this window pops up, okay? At the top, in white, highlighted in white, is my cube, okay? That's the name of the object that I'm working with. Down here, you'll notice that you have the 4 different construction modes: the secondary shape, animation, shape modeling, and the regular modeling construction mode, which is, of course, a purple lavender color, okay? Below that, we can see we have different ops, or operators: the bevel op, the extrude op, and the geometry op. The geometry op was created when I first created this object by default, okay? The extrude op was created when I extruded this polygon over here. Remember that? I extruded it and then I started rotating and playing with the settings. That was done with an extrude along axis. So here we have the extrude op. Above that, which is the most recent operator I've done, is the bevel op, which is when I beveled this corner back here, this edge. Remember that? So basically the way it works is Softimage is making a record of everything you do to this object when it comes to polygon modeling, and it's placing it all under the modeling stack. Okay, see that? That's why it's under it. That's why this thing points down with an arrow and everything's under that. The way it works is the stuff that's at the top is the most recent operations I've done. As things get older and I start doing new things, something I did 5 minutes ago might end up being somewhere down here in the list, pretty low. Okay? Now another thing, this stuff starts to add up. As I continue to say, for example, come in here and, I don't know, let's dice those polygons. Let's take that one there and let's do subdivide. Let's take that one there and let's extrude that. Now let's take this one and that one and I'll extrude that. Okay? Now when I look, notice I have a lot more construction history. Now the good thing about this construction history is that it's there. I can come back and I can adjust some of this construction history, though I may get some quirky results. For example, if I try to adjust construction history on the geometry operator down here, by clicking on the little icon, this little black icon, it opens up the PPG, okay, for that geometry operator. If I start doing things, it's going to start acting quirky and funny. That's because I'm trying to change something that happened a long time ago, and all this other stuff is on top. So the results are going to be a little unpredictable, so you got to be careful about that, okay? Now this stuff starts to add up and we have to clean this construction stack out, okay? Once this stuff starts to add up, you can end up slowing Softimage down. Your scene can end up getting big depending on how much construction history you have. In this case, this is not a lot of construction history. Softimage can handle this no problem. But let's say you had 500 of these operators in this list. Now you can end up running into some problems and your scene grows really big and out of control. So to clean this up is pretty simple. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this guy here, and I'm just going to show you in the Explorer view right here. I'm going to show you, here's the construction history, okay? What I'm going to do is with this guy selected, let me go back to that. Let me lock it down by hitting this little padlock icon up there so it doesn't move anywhere, okay? So I've got this object selected. Down here under the Edit Rollout menu, we have Freeze Group, Immediate Mode, and Freeze Modeling. Freeze M is freeze modeling. When I hit that, you notice now all that stuff got cleaned up. It basically got rid of that stuff, but my edits stayed in my viewport. That basically freezes that modeling and cleans up that stack. This makes your scene more lightweight and more optimized. Okay, last but not least, we have this EMED button over here, which is short for Immediate Mode. Right now it's off because it's gray. If I turn it on, it's going to become red. That's to give you a little bit of a warning. What Immediate Mode does is it turns off the modeling construction stack. So basically, when I start modeling this guy, you'll notice that Softimage is no longer recording all of the actions that I'm doing. What's the benefit to this? Well, the benefit is I don't have any construction history, so I don't have to worry about ever having to freeze modeling or doing any of that stuff. Okay? The bad side to this is there's no construction history. Just in case if I had to go back to an extrude operator and change some settings or anything like that, guess what? I can't. Unless I hit undo. But you don't want to depend on undo all of the time. That's bad practice. Okay? So that's what immediate mode does. I like to keep immediate mode turned off. In other words, I like to work with construction history, and then when I need to, I'll freeze modeling to clean it up. But I like to have the option of being able to go back and edit, modify, or do anything to the operators I need to. Okay, in the next video, we're going to continue on here. We have a lot of stuff to cover, so I'll see you then.